Hello there, and thank you for tuning in to listen to today's webinar focused on next generation program development, building security-oriented managed services programs for your MSP practice. My name is Stephanie Hammond, and I'm a Senior Channel Sales Specialist here at SolarWinds MSP and a member of the Training Development Team with the MSP Institute. This webinar is designed for those MSPs who are looking to market and sell more advanced service offerings to their customers. And when we speak about more advanced service offerings, this typically means programs that have more of a security-oriented focus to them, and where MSPs take a more standardized and productized approach to building their service offerings and traditionally offering these programs in an all-inclusive type purchasing model. MSPs at this level no longer offer bespoke, a la carte style programs, but instead make a conscious effort to commit to a specific technology stack and sell an all-inclusive type program based on that technology stack. Basically, at this phase, you, as the MSP, make the technology decisions for your customers, and everything is included in a fixed fee model. It is no longer about trying to sell a solution or a service to your customers. At this level, everything is automatically included for one monthly fee, and the technology included is based on what you, as the MSP, decides is the best set of technology solutions for you and your customers, all geared towards having increased security coverage and protection than what you would find in the introductory programs spoken about in our previous programs and pricing webinar. So looking at our agenda for today's webinar, we will look at market conditions to consider that may prompt you to reconsider the programs that you're offering and selling today, and look at redesigning them to have more of a security focus and productized makeup to them. Security is the hottest topic in the industry today, and one that should be top of mind for your customers, as many small and medium-sized businesses are perplexed and unsure as to the level of security protection they have in place today, and so they really are looking for guidance and advice. So if you're not offering a good security-focused package today to your customers, then not only could you be potentially missing out on some great revenue streams for your organization, but you could also be exposing yourself and your customers to a significant amount of risk as well. So if you decide that this is the route that you wish to go, then we will look at your ability to offer and deliver security-oriented programs and review if your customers are really ready to subscribe to this type of new security offerings. And then lastly, we will then outline what these new programs could potentially look like and the technology stack needed to support all the new features. So when we look at market conditions surrounding security and security breaches today, I'm sure you've all heard from your customers, oh, it will never happen to us. Really, who would target us? We aren't that big and we aren't that important. There are some great sites that you can reference when presented with this type of objection from your customers, and one of these is the breachlevelindex.com. This is a great site that will give your customers some awareness as to the amount of data records that are stolen or lost at any given time throughout an average day. So what is reported by breachlevelindex.com is that roughly 4.5 million records a day, or 189,000 records an hour, or 3,100 records a minute, or 53 records a second are stolen or lost in any given day. Pretty staggering statistics for a business owner to ignore and say, yeah, that will never really happen to us. Because any user could potentially be the cause of a security breach that can result in data being compromised, lost, or stolen. As a result, you as the MSP want to be discussing and educating your customers on what is really going on in the marketplace today, and that thinking and hoping that it will never happen to them is not the smartest business strategy. Again, in the climate today, it's no longer about if they will get breached, but more about when. And the value your security services can bring to the table is to help limit and mitigate the risk of a security breach as much as possible for them. And to reinforce this point as to how seriously businesses should be taking the security of their overall network, we can take it to a higher level and reference the Norse attack map. This website shows hacking attempts that are mapped out by the company Norse. Now, this isn't necessarily real time, but this site can give your customers an indication from a global perspective as to how many attacks are happening throughout the world, and to drive home the point that really hackers They're everywhere. And their only ambition in life is to figure out how they can get into your customers' networks and steal their most valuable asset, which we all know is their data. Now, this view doesn't mean that breaches are necessarily occurring, but it illustrates that people are attempting to breach, and your customers need to be educated as to how these attempts can affect their own business in their own little spot in the world. It may not be directly impacting their business, but maybe one of their suppliers is breached, or another organization that they deal with is breached, or an employee working from home on an unsecure network could also be potentially the cause of a breach. As a result, your customers really need to understand that breach attempts, they're constant, and they need to implement the necessary precautions to protect their own business and to start mitigating their own risk, really in a better fashion than what they're currently doing today. So, continuing the theme around how security should be important to your customers, it's a pretty sobering statistic that approximately only 26% of small businesses perform a daily backup. So, when beginning to engage your customers about security and their own data protection requirements, a couple of key questions you're going to want to ask. What are the recovery point objectives and what are the recovery time objectives? In other words, how much data is your customer willing to lose and how long can they afford to be without their critical data? Is it a day's worth, 2 days worth, a week, more? And maybe they'll tell you, they're willing and able to maybe go a couple of days, but this just signifies that a bigger discussion needs to be had with them, and you need to decide if this is the type of business you want as a customer. Because regardless of whether they tell you that, we're okay with losing a day or two of data to save some money each month, you have to expect that in any incident where data loss does happen to occur, they're still going to blame you for their data loss, which ultimately is going to affect your overall client relationship and could extend to your overall reputation as well within your community. So to drive the point home further, so that you can really help to get them to understand the total ramifications of all of this, when you're dealing with a decision maker or a C-level individual, ask them to reflect on all the activities they perform throughout their typical day as part of their job function. And then have them reflect on this. After working all day, doing everything that they need to do with their computer, suddenly at 4:59, their computer crashes. And their backup was set to run at 5. How would they recover from all of that? Does that mean that, maybe it might put them away behind a day for the week? Does that mean, it's lost, we'll just deal with it? Or does it mean, wow, that's a really good point. We probably should look at more frequent backup options for data protection to ensure that we're mitigating our risk? So these are the types of discussions that you should be having with your customers so that in their mind, they're starting to formulate, maybe there is a better way to do this that I haven't thought of yet. Because again, you as the MSP, you are their trusted advisor. You are the expert. So you have to use that credibility to educate your customers in order to uncover the opportunity. And again, to extend the education discussion further, you want to ask your customer, if your data was to be compromised or your systems happen to go down, what would the recovery time objective be that you could live with? And again, how much data would you be willing to lose? Because what surveys are telling us is, out of 1,000 businesses surveyed, 29% of them have experienced employee downtime that lasted anywhere from 1 to 8 hours. And 27% of them experienced employee downtime that lasted 8 to 40 hours. These are incredible numbers. If a business has downtime of a whole day or a whole week, and they're paying their employees a whole day or a whole week of working time and not generating the revenue per employee that they expect per hour, then instead of being revenue producers, these employees have effectively become a cost center. And then the question becomes, how does the business recover from this downtime, and how do they recoup this lost revenue? Hopefully, this should really open up discussions around, again, how long can you afford to have your employees offline, and how quickly do you want to get your employees back on track? Again, the opportunity here for MSPs is to really get a good understanding of the consequences downtime, and data loss can have on a business, which will allow them to build out programs and processes that will work to minimize all of this. Because the biggest cost to any organization is the human resource and payroll costs. So the more that you can mitigate downtime for a business, the more productive the employees will remain, which will translate into higher profitability levels for the organization as a whole. So given the current market conditions and events, that we've been witnessing in the media, security, it is a hot topic, and the businesses should be concerned and worried about how truly they are protected themselves from security breaches. According to a Ponemon Institute survey done in 2017 around the state of cybersecurity in small and medium-sized businesses, 78% of desktops were affected by malware in 2017. So there's very good ammunition for MSPs to capitalize on this and redesign the programs and branding to help combat this. And the benefit to small businesses who opt to work with an MSP that offers security-centric services are numerous. But having the ability to provide customers with solutions designed to ensure business continuity, end user and network protection, optimization, and uptime are key. Also, by enrolling in a security-centric program that focuses on security detection and prevention will also help business costs be reduced with security breaches, because recovery costs from a security attack can easily amount anywhere from $300 to $450 per desktop if that desktop wasn't properly protected. So we know that small and medium-sized businesses, they're struggling today with respect to security. Think back, several years ago when the industry was just starting out. You as an MSP and we as a vendor, much of the time was spent on educating SMBs about what managed services really are. Today, businesses understand what managed services are, and they understand what an MSP will bring to the table in terms of IT management. But security, that's a new realm. And as such, it requires you to go, back in time and resurrect that educational component to your sales process. But ultimately, small and medium-sized businesses, they're really struggling with security and how to adhere to it. They're struggling with how to bring better security into their environment. They're struggling with how to best protect their data, because really that's what hackers want. And they want to go after that data because that is where the value is. And the value comes from them being able to resell that data on the dark web, or them selling whatever the algorithm was that they built that allowed them to successfully breach that environment in the first place and then sell that on the dark web. Because when you really think about it, this is really just a business for them. So the challenge becomes not only getting the business owner to understand that they themselves could be a target, but that they could also be the gateway to a larger data theft or hacking attempt as well. Maybe somebody had embedded something in their network and using them as a means to get to a larger organization they normally deal with. Again, your customer may not be directly affected, and their data may be not specifically targeted or stolen, but if they become the gateway, your customer's reputation could be tarnished, especially if it happens to get out in the media. So businesses need to be proactive in how they go about putting protections in place, because they are part of an overall ecosystem as an organization and a business. And I would highly suspect that many small and medium-sized organizations do not have the internal expertise around how to implement this level of security protection. So that is really where the challenge comes from, helping them to realize that they need to ask for and be willing to pay for help. Because ransomware, it's very common. It isn't going anywhere. Users will assume that something they receive is safe and that it's legit, and they're going to go ahead and click on it anyway. And then suddenly, they are infected. And stats actually show that 37% of the time, it is the employee who is the source of a security breach. So it's up to you as the MSP to figure out a way to mitigate this and stop the infection from proliferating out to the other users internally and then externally back out into the environment. So even at the ransomware level, there are some minimum protections that you can help put in place to prevent this. And this is where you have that unique opportunity to really evolve your managed services practice, looking at market conditions today, you have that unique ability to go out and specialize in key areas like data management, data protection, or the recovery component, or offering varied levels of security services. Obviously, you can go out and promote these services to net new customers, but you can also expand the scope of services that you're currently providing to existing customers today. And through some tweaks to your existing programs, that we're going to illustrate in a little bit later in today's webinar, you can generate some really good upsell and cross-sell opportunities just by layering in some of these additional levels of security services. And when we look at who to target for your new layered security services, it's really looking at, who's the most vulnerable in the marketplace. Looking at the pie chart on the right, as mentioned previously, you've probably heard from your customers, my business isn't that type of business that hackers are going to really want to go after. Well, unfortunately, that isn't quite true, because when looking at the technology or the other slices of this pie chart, most businesses rely on some form of technology to run their business. And as such, this creates access points and gateways for hackers to enter. So really, all businesses are potential targets for attack and require your help. Given all of this, the best thing right now that MSPs can do is to capitalize on the media frenzy around security breaches and exploitation of software vulnerabilities. Again, ransomware is prevalent. It's not going anywhere. It's going to continue to be an ongoing threat, and it's going to continue to happen on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. As a result, MSPs need to know what services they should offer to their customers to leverage this opportunity today, as unfortunately, AV and patch, they're no longer sufficient security coverage. They just don't cut it anymore. Businesses need more in order to be protected, stay protected, and mitigate their risk from being compromised. And this is all great news for the MSP because it means that there are more upsell and cross-sell opportunities for them, which will provide the heightened ability to further entrench themselves in the prospect's businesses. So some great benefits that MSPs can reap who decide to take their program suite to the next level. First, and I think the most important, increased contract profitability margins. If you are the type of MSP that's offering bespoke programs or maybe a la carte programs today, or maybe you're offering kind of a basic proactive program, that might be missing some key security pieces like vulnerability scanning, email security, backup, or threat monitoring and detection services, there is the opportunity here to revisit these existing contracts and maybe modernize them by adding in new security services that might not be part of the original contract today. By rebranding yourselves as a provider of security services and revamping your contracts by adding in new security-oriented features, it's a great way to really get around that inevitable price objection that you probably will receive from your existing customers when you ask to try and garner additional revenue from them. Secondly, program standardization can really help improve your sales and service delivery processes. From the sales and marketing perspective, program standardization will make it much easier for your marketing department to promote your services out in the marketplace and for your sales personnel to sell and have quality conversations around. From a service delivery standpoint, program standardization will help to streamline not only the onboarding of new MSP clients into your RMM solution, but will also help streamline the daily management for NOC personnel and will help improve your service delivery for your support staff as well. Thirdly, servers are transitioning into the cloud, and they're slowly losing prominence as the core component of an MSP's program structure. So the business opportunity becomes having the ability to strategically focus on the end user and what is happening between that chair and the keyboard, and striving to build a relationship with them and the devices they rely upon to perform their daily jobs. Because if we can protect the end user, then we're ultimately protecting the entire network and the organization as a whole. Fourthly, rebranding yourself as a provider of security services, it will help potentially attract and allow you to deal with higher quality clients and help set yourself apart from your competition. Any clients that have to adhere with any type of compliancy measures like HIPAA, PCI, SOX, GDPR, these are great organizations and verticals to target and to promote your new suite of security programs to, really, especially if you're not conducting business with them today. And lastly, program redesign, focusing on security threat monitoring and detection and protection services, will help to mitigate overall risk, not only for your customers, obviously, but also for yourself as well as the MSP. The biggest benefit of moving your programs in this direction is not only will it help protect and strengthen your client relationships, but will also help to ensure that your reputation as an MSP remains intact. I'm pretty sure your clients wouldn't be happy with you if you allowed their network to be compromised or breached. So designing standardized programs centered on good cyber hygiene practices and services will ensure that neither party faces undue risk. So if after all this you're deciding that it is time to maybe augment the services that you're offering today and start the process of rebranding yourself as a provider of security services, an important first step will first be to conduct an internal SWOT analysis to reflect honestly on what you can and maybe cannot do from a security sales and delivery perspective today. Items that you're going to want to review. What sort of security policies, practices, procedures do you have in place today to monitor and manage your own internal network from security threats to ensure that your own network cannot be hacked or compromised? What investments have you made in security tool sets and security training for your internal staff? Do you employ any sort of specialized security personnel? If you don't have specialized security personnel on staff, has anyone on your staff ever been trained in security protocols? And this list is important because if you're not doing these items yourselves, then you cannot go out and promote yourself as a security provider. You have to be following the same set of security protocols yourselves that you would be recommending to your customers. Because if you don't practice what you're preaching, then you're putting yourself at risk and your customers at risk, as you can inadvertently become that loophole between the security breach and your end customers, which really is never a good position to be in. Basically, it really comes down to, is your own house in order as it relates to the processes you have in place to mitigate your own risk? And that's really the main question you need to ask yourself. As the MSP, what level of acceptable risk are you willing to take on? Because depending on how much risk you're willing to take on or that you're comfortable in taking on, that is going to determine the level and type of security services you'll be able to offer to your customers. You may not be able to, or even want to, go to that level of implementing a full security operations center with a SIM threat detection and prevention program, because maybe you don't have the capability in-house or the money really to invest in a 24/7 SOC. And that's okay. It's about you mitigating your risk to a level that you are comfortable with. But it doesn't mean that you can't partially outsource some of your security services or offer something more robust and comprehensive in the future once you've had the opportunity to build your team's skill sets, with respect to security. And really, you need to think about, are your customers ready for this? This isn't a program that's going to be for everyone. A very select type of customer is going to be interested in programs like these and be willing to pay for these types of programs. But the nice thing about this own internal review process that you would go through is that the questions that you're going to be asking of yourself in your own practice, you can turn around and ask these of your customers and prospects as well to determine their own level of confidence in how protected and secure they feel their own network and their employees are. And as an extension of your initial SWOT analysis, just want to take you through this process that goes into greater detail to determine your readiness and ability to begin offering higher levels of security services. Really, again, it's all for internal reflection and planning purposes. So step one, obviously start with identifying who your best targets are, or who would be the best markets to target for your more advanced security offerings. Looking at it from both a new customer acquisition standpoint as well as from an existing customer conversion perspective. We're actually finding that the best opportunities for selling security services at the moment can be found in the mid-market space and targeting those companies that have small internal IT teams. And these are great companies to target as they tend to have larger budgets. They tend not to be as price conscious, so they are more apt to spend the money needed to protect themselves. Because when you look at the average internal IT team, typically ranges anywhere from 1 to 6 employees, and typically none of them are specialists in any real area, especially when it comes to security. They are mostly all IT journalists, so they tend to be leery and unsure of themselves, when it comes to security policies and practices. For example, they may have put in a two-factor authentication system in their internal network, and they may have everyone on the same antivirus software, but they don't have any real processes in place as it relates to security management and threat detection and prevention. So these types of businesses are really good prospects to target as they want the coverage, they want to offload it, and they typically have the funds to pay for it. Looking at step 2, do you have a defined data and security assessment process in place today for your customers and prospects? Do you have the necessary technology tool sets and the acute knowledge of what needs to be done at each prospect site to properly run a security and baseline network assessment? It's really about having the ability to do your own due diligence to determine the safety and security of the current network infrastructure today, and being able to offer a comprehensive review of what security pitfalls exist that need to be corrected. And this should be a repeatable and scalable process across all prospects and customers that you come across. There are a variety of tools out there to help you with this, and many of our top MSPs actually use a few different network assessment solutions to help them assess their prospects' networks, because each tool looks at completely different data sets, which are then compared against each other. Looking at step 3, it's all about setting a minimum standard and establishing a baseline level of services you will take on, offer to take on a security type customer, and determining who on your technical team will onboard and manage these customers. And we're going to look at this in more detail when we go through the different security packages you can offer, when we move into our discussion around, kind of an all-inclusive entry-level security program as a baseline package. And this is where your services and support need to be well defined, especially as your sales teams begin starting to promote all of these new services out into the marketplace. If the customer prospect, if they push back on these services and maybe they want to dictate to you what services they'll buy and how, then they may not be a qualified buyer. If they only want you to do patch, you're going to have to push back and say, I'm sorry, Mr. Customer, but my minimum security package is A, and we can go up from there to look at other packages like B and C. If you don't want to take any of these, then I can look at referring you to another MSP that might be able to assist you, as I cannot assume the liability for your business without you adhering to my recommended security coverage. Which leads into step 4. Are you ready to look at productizing as much as possible your various solutions in order to meet customer, regulatory, and market needs and expectations? Are you ready to create and commit to structured, standardized programs and put an end to selling bespoke and ad hoc programs that are mandated and dictated to you by customers and their perceived limited budgets that they have for technology? Really, are you ready to let business walk away if need be? Looking at GDPR, HIPAA, PCI, regulations and compliance concerns are everywhere. And as an MSP specializing in security services, you need to be educated. You need to know that these various pieces of legislations, what they require, and how they will affect your customer base so you can then evolve and align your new services to support these. By productizing your offerings, it's going to create a much more scalable and repeatable process for your engineers, from an onboarding and overall service delivery and management perspective, and help make the program levels more streamlined and simple for salespeople to explain and sell. And most of our successful partners do standardize and productize their security and data protection packages, and they do assume a more of a take it or leave it approach when they position their offerings to their prospects. At this level, they don't allow customers or salespeople to alter the programs. And then lastly, looking at step 5, do you have a CSO, CTO, CIO service mapped out to help manage strategy, growth plans, protection practices moving forward as you onboard customers into your new services? Do you have people on staff and the cycles to ensure that you can follow through with these high-level and strategic consulting services on a regular and ongoing basis? Because at this level, these types of advanced consulting services, such as CTO, CSO, and CIO roles, are required. Not only will they allow you to further entrench yourselves in their business, but will also help you become an integral part of their strategy and growth planning sessions, which will obviously help you identify additional upsell and cross-sell opportunities as you move forward. And at this slide, just want to provide you with some additional questions to consider as you delve deeper into the self-reflection exercise. As the MSP, asking yourself these types of questions, it's going to help determine the overall state of your internal processes and procedures that are in place today, which will hopefully highlight for you the necessary refinements or investments that you're going to have to make if you find that you're weak in any of these areas. Or if you find that you can't make the necessary changes or investments necessary, at the current time, but you still want to move ahead with the rebranding exercise, really that's not a problem either. You're just going to have to adjust what you plan to offer in the market as it relates to security. So really going through the SWOT analysis is a great critical step. And then when ready to go to market and begin promoting your security programs, again, the nice thing is that these same questions that you are using to reflect internally can then be used outwardly on any new prospect to determine their own existing security baseline, their own views and their own protocols as it relates to security, which will help to verify if they could be a good buyer for your new programs. So if you've listened to our other MSP Institute recorded webinar on introductory programs and pricing strategies, this program outline should look familiar to you. In that webinar, we outlined 3 basic program types that we've seen our partners go to market with. Under this more traditional model, at the low end, we have the a la carte program offering. This is the program that's geared towards, more smaller customers, limited budgets, and have basic networking and security requirements. They feel that they really don't need managed services, and they tend to shy away from any sort of contract arrangement, and they would prefer to just pay for support on an as-needed or time-material basis. The a la carte program methodology works really well as it's meant to begin the education process with these more smaller customers by offering them more of a menu of services that they can choose from that best suits their immediate needs or maybe their budgetary constraints at this time. But it's also a great strategy for those MSPs who might be new to the space and want to offer more of a basic program to their customers that really works to convert their price-sensitive time and material customers into a services model that begins to offer them regular recurring revenue each month. Up from that introductory program level is the proactive program, and this is where MSPs begin to offer a core set of monitoring services along with regular monthly maintenance activities to ensure the client's network remains stable, reliable, and good working order so that employees remain as productive as possible. Typically at this level, any type of reactive support, ad hoc support, on-site help desk calls, they're outside the scope of this contract and they're billed over and above. And from a security perspective, the proactive program typically just offers basic AV and patching services. More advanced security and data protection services, if they are offered, are typically reserved for the highest program offering, which we call the fully managed program. And in the fully managed program at this level, the client's looking for complete network coverage and support for one monthly fee. This program contains all of the monitoring and maintenance activities of the proactive program, but all the reactive support, ad hoc support, help desk calls, remote, on-site support, they're also included as well in the monthly fee. So really the theme is all about budget predictability at this level. And there are usually higher levels of security built in beyond AV and patching at this level. Typically, you'll see vulnerability scanning, email security, and desktop and server backup. They're automatically built in as well. But at the end of the day, the theme behind these 3 program levels is the theme of protection. These programs are designed to offer varying levels of network and security protection based on the customer's budget and price point. But when we begin talking about next generation program development, the MSP begins to transition beyond programs that just aim to protect the environment, but rather program design shifts to offer a program that serves to prevent major security issues and breaches by leveraging advanced technology tools, processes, and certified security personnel to detect security issues ahead of time so that they're not disruptive to the end user and the organization as a whole. Because ultimately, nothing can be 100% effective in protecting networks from security breaches, except for investing in a program suite that can actually monitor and detect threats ahead of time. And at this level, partners are dropping the a la carte program methodology at the low end, as their goal is no longer to offer bespoke one-off programs and services. They've moved beyond that, trying to convert their customers from break-fix into monthly managed services by any means possible. But rather, in next-generation program development, MSPs aim to build programs based on best-of-breed tool sets that they are comfortable in supporting. And they standardize on these tool sets and standardize their MSP clients on these tool sets. And if a customer is not interested in switching to the tool sets recommended by the MSP will actually decline to do business with that company. Because at this level, the MSP is focused on risk mitigation and prevention. And if the customer isn't willing to adhere to these recommendations, then the MSP, they won't enter into a contract with them. Because again, ransomware is prevalent. It's not going anywhere. Again, it's going to continue to be an ongoing threat to businesses and will continue to appear daily, weekly, monthly. And as a result, MSPs really need to rebrand and redesign their existing programs to leverage this market opportunity because, again, AV and patching, they're no longer sufficient in protecting end users from breaches. Businesses need additional security services layered in over and above AV and patching. And it starts at the perimeter level with mail protection, web filtering, and proper firewall management and monitoring. And that really is the key. If we can block as many attacks as possible at the perimeter level, that will really prevent anything from hopefully getting through and reaching the end users in the first place. But again, nothing is 100%. So good cyber hygiene also recommends additional security measures be taken at the end user level as well, which again includes more than just your traditional AV and patching. Additional security measures such as vulnerability scanning, password management, and disk encryption services should be set up as well. Because nothing is 100%. As a final measure of protection, a good comprehensive backup solution should also be put in place. So if there's a breach, you have the ability to go back in time to the point prior to the breach occurring and restore all of the necessary critical files to the user's workstations. Because at the end of the day, all of these security measures are meant to protect your customer's most valuable asset, their data. So to ensure complete protection of their data, it's not just about implementing device-level protection, but you really need to consider implementing perimeter-level security protection as well. So in building out your own security-oriented programs, there's 4 key areas that you'll want to consider for inclusion. And we really consider these to be the building blocks of any security-oriented program. And these 4 blocks include infrastructure, data security, risk and vulnerability management, and identity management. And within each building block, there are multiple tools and services that are contained within each. But at a high level, what we really mean is, when we look at infrastructure management, here we're looking at endpoint security, really through AV protection, perimeter security, threat intelligence, and log and event management. For data security and protection, here we're looking at data loss prevention, usually via local and cloud backup and email archiving, web content filtering, email security, again via AV and email filtering, and disk and file encryption. For risk and vulnerability management, here we're looking at things like code analysis, infrastructure vulnerability management and scanning, consulting around security policy adherence, penetration testing, and intrusion detection. And for identity management, here we're looking at such items like user management and access rights, basically who has access in the company to what application information. So as the MSP, you should really be locking down, things like Facebook, maybe YouTube, BitTorrent, because these could be central points of potential breaches in the environment. And this is all part of the risk mitigation techniques that you as the MSP is really trying to deliver on. Also at this level, we're looking at authentication and authorization via two-factor authentication, unified account via LDAP, and then obviously data governance. So in looking at these various building blocks, how you decide to design your security programs really depends on, doing that SWOT analysis and looking at where your skill sets are and where your team's skill sets are, and looking at what your technology tool stack looks like today, or what additional tools you're looking at to investing in, and what your market needs and requirements are. Although a lot of these services can be handled by different software solutions that you may already have or could purchase, other things like data governance and security policy adherence, these are more consulting type of engagements that you'll just need to familiarize yourself with if you're going to proceed. So, meat and potatoes, looking at next generation program development, here we've laid out 3 potential programs that you can build on and go to market with. As mentioned, we are discontinuing the sale of the entry-level a la carte program. Partners at this level find that offering and dealing with smaller clients who would be attracted to an a la carte type of program methodology, they're typically more time-consuming than they're really worth and take away from the higher value work that they need to focus on. So with next-gen program development, the base program usually starts with the proactive program. And some key changes that we've made to this program from what was discussed in the introductory programs and pricing webinar. In this illustrative program, it now offers email security and critical documents backup, because the philosophy of this program is to effectively counter and prevent ransomware. And by first offering email security through managed mail, the effect is, again, if we can stop viruses and ransomware at the perimeter level, then it reduces the chances of them even getting into the network in the first place. And then by incorporating documents backup protection as well, if by chance something happens to get in and there is the wrong click of a mouse by an end user, then we have the ability to go in, restore the business's most critical business files. But just like in the introductory webinar on programs and pricing, all support in the proactive program, help desk, ad hoc, remote, on-site, that is all out of scope and billed in addition over and above the monthly fee. Then at the managed level, here we're including everything from the proactive program, but also adding in full server and workstation backup beyond just backing up basic business documents, vulnerability scanning, data risk assessment, along with incorporating unlimited help desk, remote, and on-site support. The philosophy here is not just about ransomware protection, but focuses on overall business continuity as well. And if the MSP can include monthly vulnerability scanning as another security prevention technique, then they have the additional safeguards in place to alert them if any new vulnerabilities are imminent within the network that could potentially compromise users. And if, again, something happens via wrong click of the mouse by the end user, then by incorporating full server and desktop backup, that includes backing up the entire system state and all forms of documentation, that provides and includes complete data protection coverage with speedy recovery services to get the end users back up and running, and therefore is instrumental in getting the entire business back on track with minimal downtime. Then at the high end, we're introducing a new threat monitoring services program. This is where we move beyond basic cyber hygiene practices and really strive for threat detection and prevention. Because even with these new proactive and fully managed programs, they're not 100% foolproof in preventing security breaches. But through minimal investment and some new tool sets, the risk has been reduced immensely with strategies introduced to safeguard and protect the organization's highly valued business data. But under the new Threat Monitoring Services program, core features that make up this program level, obviously over and above what's already included at the fully managed level, is a Security Operations Center. This is a 24/7 operation that's staffed by security personnel and runs independently of your NOC. A SOC is solely focused on threat hunting, threat detection, and alerting usually via some sort of SIM management platform. And as such, it includes higher level of security analysis and reporting than what is delivered in the lower level program tiers. And we will be producing additional training videos focused solely on the threat monitor and our threat monitoring services, and they'll be released shortly. So here we're looking at a recap of what the technology tool stack would look like at each program level. You may already have a lot of these solutions in place, and there may be some new solutions you'll need to invest in, depending on how you design your own security offerings. But the key here is to really standardize on one solution per feature so as not to overwhelm your NOC and security staff by having them be experts on several different solutions peppered in and amongst your customers. In reviewing the technology stack for each level, at a minimum, for all program levels, you're going to need a core RMM solution, as it provides an overall global view of the environment you're protecting. Each regulatory act actually requires that the customer's network be monitored by an RMM solution. In addition to the ongoing network monitoring, there's also ongoing management and maintenance that's required as well. In a typical proactive MSP program, this maintenance could be completed monthly. But when selling a security-specific package, this maintenance is typically completed 2 to 3 times a month to ensure you're staying ahead of any possible breaches or issues. Security vulnerability assessment and testing. As mentioned previously, this is needed to help identify vulnerabilities and security gaps and set a baseline for future remediation. And this is really mandatory so that you know what type of environment you're dealing with from the get-go, so that you can plan your remediation and any potential project plans accordingly. Automation obviously has to be included. When it comes to security, a human will make a mistake. It's only natural. So the more the MSP can automate and let the software do the work, the less risk of human errors occurring that would jeopardize the baseline security protection. And the more profitable the MSP will become because the human factor has been removed. A defined and tested AV solution also needs to be incorporated. It is imperative to not allow your customers to define or dictate what AV solution you're going to use to protect their network. Please don't inherit their AV or feel that you need to continue using theirs because, maybe they've already paid up their subscription for the year. In security, it's all about standardization. So even if the customer has already paid for another AV solution, please be firm and tell the customer that they're being migrated over to your preferred AV solution. You shouldn't waver on this and be prepared to walk away from this customer if they do happen to challenge you on this or any other software tool that you recommend as part of your security packages. Full and complete patch management needs to be included as a minimum as well, focusing not just on Windows OS patches, but also on third-party application patching as well. Perimeter level mail protection is included as part of the minimum proactive and managed programs. And lastly, as a core component of either a proactive or managed security program, backup and management of critical business files like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, PDFs, that should be included as well. Then as you move into a more managed security program, you'll need to stack on additional technology solutions that focus on device encryption, two-factor authentication, web content filtering. And then if you do want to offer threat monitoring and detection services, higher level security tool sets and technologies will need to be purchased, which include penetration testing toolkit, a SIM solution, and unified threat management solution. In addition, significant investments will also need to be made in spinning up a security operations center, again that is separate for your managed services NOC center. The SOC will need to be staffed with purely security-minded specialists whose sole role is to monitor and manage threat levels and act immediately in the event any security attack or breach is discovered. But only those service providers that truly want to evolve into becoming an MSSP and are ready, willing, and able to make the appropriate investments in the people, the processes, the technology tools to play at that level really need to be concerned with making these types of investments. Because at this level, the MSPs typically have customers who are already willing and able to pay for this level of security protection. So they're typically not bothered by the significant cost to acquire these tool sets and make these investments. But then business and security level reporting should be included on an ongoing basis in all program levels, outlining all AV, patch activity, and providing information about overall network health. It underlies every program level and provides the empirical evidence needed to confirm to your customer that you are maintaining the security baseline and that you are continuing to oversee the security protocols that you've put in place and are maintaining as well. However, these reports, they're not meant to be emailed out each month. They should actually be presented as part of your regular, CIO, CTO, CSO visit and discussed during each on-site visit to communicate that you are working to maintain the baseline and the protocols that you've put in place at the beginning, and that you continue to hold them to a standard to meet your requirements and expectations. And you need to be diligent and ensure that these visits get scheduled and that you do give yourself that face-to-face time with key stakeholders. Collaboration and consultation is necessary. And every month you'll need to review the risk analysis reports to them, as that's really how you're going to help continue to drive and upsell any cross-sell opportunities for your business and keep your company current and relevant in the eyes of your customers. And I know I mentioned that at this level, partners aren't really offering any sort of a la carte services to their customers, because again, they're trying to focus on program standardization. But here's a list of some other services that we've seen our advanced security partners include and sell to their customers. And these are sold over and above their core managed security program offering. And these services, again, are based on, your team's skill sets, their existing technology tool stack, and what client requirements and market climate dictate in their area. So just to recap on what was covered in today's webinar, build your value proposition around your core requirements. And what do we mean by that? It's not enough just to say, hey, we're the best MSP in the market today. Every MSP says that. You need to devise a new security-centric value proposition. Something like, we completely understand the value of security as it relates to your business needs today and the importance of securing and protecting your critical business and customer data to prevent data loss. Your core requirements have to live up to your value prop, and they have to adhere to the services you're going to provide. In saying this, you cannot let your customers dictate to you what services you will deliver and how you plan to deliver them. If your customer or prospect wants to make changes to your offerings as they feel they know better or they don't have the ability to fully pay for your services, then you cannot be afraid to push back and educate your prospect on why they require this level of protection for their business. Or worst case, and it's hard to say, you can't be afraid to walk away from this opportunity. Because if you do try to accommodate in order to win the business, it could lead to possible harm to your brand and reputation if something happens and that business suffers a breach because they didn't have your recommended protection coverage in place. It is very important to stay true to your own internal standards and baseline that you have set for your practice. With managed services, it's not really necessary to sell your services using fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Your message at the managed services level is more about improved employee productivity, due to heightened network reliability and stability. But when selling security services, you have to sell based on fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Ransomware, security breaches, they're here to stay. It's no longer if your customer is going to become compromised, but more about when they become compromised. No business is immune, regardless of what the business owner believes, and hoping that they don't suffer a breach is not a sound business plan. Many business owners are struggling with, am I properly protected? They don't know what they don't know, and you can assist with that, and that is where your opportunity lies. Before starting to offer security services, make sure you've done your homework and you're confident in being able to deliver on what you're selling. If you and your team are not prepared and you're not ready, do not begin offering and selling security just yet. And please don't oversell your capabilities or your services. You're only going to end up hurting your brand. You're only going to end up hurting your reputation, as you will get called out very quickly in the marketplace as being inadequate and substandard. But also ensure when taking on new security clients that you stick to your minimum qualification standards and do not compromise your standards to win the business. Do not allow customers to dictate again what services they will buy from you, as you will risk your brand and your reputation as well. Not every customer is going to be a fit for these types of services that you're going to now be offering, and that is really okay. This is how you're going to be able to differentiate yourself from your competition. You are offering a suite of services that your competition is more than likely not offering in the marketplace today. And so you don't want to offer these services to every business. You need to qualify properly and be selective by choosing the right businesses that value what you're saying and want to do business with you. And you can help sell your new services by positioning yourself as that sober second opinion. Position yourself as that organization that's unbiased and just wants to provide a solid overview and assessment as to how the business stands today from a security and regulatory perspective. If your assessment is done well, managed services usually rides its coattails and you're going to close monthly contract. Practicing your due diligence when targeting new businesses will lead to qualified and serious prospects. Ensure that you're targeting the right type of customers, those that recognize the importance of having a properly protected network and those that value the expertise your organization can bring to the table. Basically, if they're willing to pay for your security assessment, then you most definitely have a qualified buyer. But if they come to you and say that, they don't want to pay for the baseline security assessment to verify, whether they're properly protected or not, then you probably don't have a qualified prospect, and just move on. There are other businesses out there who will recognize the value you bring to the table. And if you practice your due diligence in how you target and position your services, this will ensure excellent retention and provide you with valuable and reliable clients moving forward. And again, if the customer is not willing to make the required investments and follow your recommendations as outlined via your security and network assessment process, then don't take them on. Let that prospect go. Don't spin your wheels thinking that they're going to come around. They will only serve to negatively impact your business as you try to scale up and grow. It will also be important to properly train and educate your salespeople, and this should be done prior to you going to market with your security packages. And although, maybe certifications would be good, not absolutely necessary, but will assist in building the capabilities and confidence in your sales team. And lastly, having a really good understanding of the various regulations that are out there today. Regulations, they're not something to be afraid of. They're actually could be your friend. Having a thorough knowledge of the various regulations that are out there that your customers potentially fall under will help set your organization apart from your competition. But keep in mind that thin line. You, as a provider of security services, cannot make a business compliant. You can only help businesses adhere to the requirements that are spelled out in the various regulatory acts. But if you have a good understanding of these various requirements and what businesses need to do from a technology perspective to adhere to these requirements, that's going to help set you up as an authority and providing a differentiating factor for your business out in the marketplace. And to expand a bit on the training and certifications point from the previous slide, the higher level security services that you can offer and provide customers means the higher level of training and certifications your tech team and organization will require. But it also means that you're more justified you are to charge a premium for your services than those currently being charged by standard MSPs. But becoming an MSSP requires a lot of work. So if you're looking into offering security services, it will be a requirement to have staff properly trained and certified. Certifications vary, but there are typically 3 key areas that are covered, and it comes down to 3 main areas. Knowledge, having general security knowledge and cybersecurity training. Organization, things like ISO 27001 certification training, COBIT, ITIL, PCI, HIPAA, GDPR. These types of certifications create a process for the MSP and the business to follow. Products, ensuring your engineers are properly trained on the specific vendor products that you have standardized on, like Cisco, SonicWall, that type of thing, and participating in vendor certification if available. And if you are offering comprehensive security services that include the use of a security operations center, specific SOC requirements include, incident response, mitigation management, protection protocols, remediation, and recovery processes. But a key point here that I want to stress is there's really no need for you to necessarily go out and build out your own SOC, especially in the beginning while you're working to build up your security customer base. A lot of times to start, organizations will outsource their SOC requirements and will partner with other organizations that offer SOC as a service, which can easily be white labeled. And that is something that we can actually assist with you here at SolarWinds MSP with our threat monitoring service provider program that we now offer. Because development of a SOC can be extremely cost prohibitive, as finding and staffing certified security personnel, it can be really difficult and obviously expensive. But with our new threat monitoring service provider program, we've actually partnered with 2 master MSSPs right now that are rock stars in the security space and have already built out their own SOC. They've already made the investment in the right threat detection and prevention software. They already have certified security specialists on staff. And as such, they have the capacity to take on additional customers by working with emerging security-minded MSPs. And this type of partnership is extremely beneficial and provides the utmost in flexibility for those MSPs who want to transition into the security arena without having to incur a huge upfront infrastructure and human resource cost. And the way this program typically works is that the MSP maintains the overall customer relationship, but through the partnership is able to now offer more extensive and comprehensive security services to their larger and more advanced customers by leveraging the knowledge, technology, and staff of the master MSSP. The MSSP will work behind the scenes, providing the threat monitoring services, managing the alerts, the notifications that get generated. They're the ones that are going to be interpreting the results. And then the MSP continues to interface with their end customer and complete, any or all remediation work as necessary under the guidance of the MSSP partner. And then as the MSP grows and, they begin to build up their own security-oriented base, the goal is, after a period of time, if they wish to do so, be able to invest in their own MSSP practice. So to help illustrate this relationship or this partnership a bit further, just wanted to provide a breakdown of the division of labor and the typical roles and responsibilities of the MSP team versus the threat monitoring service provider team, in other words, known as the master MSSP. So starting on the left, the MSP team will be responsible for the assessment phase in the sales process, leveraging their security assessment tool stack to identify vulnerabilities, risks, gaps in existing security protocols and procedures at their customer site. Then, with the aid of the threat monitoring service provider team, the SIM software or the threat detection software will be deployed with information being sent directly to their SOC. The threat monitor service provider team will take it from there, being responsible for the threat hunting, alerting, log correlation, and analysis when threats are detected, and then will consult with the MSP team on remediation next steps. The MSP team will then work directly with the end user, perform any necessary remediation tasks as warranted, and then will deal with any post-incident lessons and updates, ensuring proper controls and risk mitigation tactics are implemented to hopefully reduce the chances of another breach happening in the future. So this type of partnership is a great option for those MSPs who have customers that are looking for more extensive security protection coverage, but who don't currently have the means, the staff, or the technology to build their security practice up from scratch. By working with a threat monitor service provider, the MSP can remain intimately involved and take the MSP client relationship to that next level, all while learning the ropes to hopefully take over the full security responsibility when the time is right. So thank you for tuning in and listening to today's MSP Institute webinar focused on next generation program development, building security-oriented managed services programs for your MSP practice. We hope you found it informative and helpful as you transition your MSP practice into its next phase of growth. Any questions you may have, please do not hesitate to reach out to your dedicated channel sales specialist, as they would love to assist. Thank you again.